What's up, boxing fans? I'm Michael Montero for Boxing Monthly. You're watching the Neutral Corner for the week of June 18th. So I just had my birthday yesterday, turned 37, and I'm still kind of recovering from all the eating and drinking the past weekend. It was a lot of fun, but some good fights over the weekend, some surprises, some splashes that we didn't quite expect. But also some big news and notes have happened over the last 48 hours or so. So let's get into some news and notes, and then we'll check out the action from last week. So the first big thing to talk about this week is the lawsuit between All Star Boxing and Canelo Alvarez has been, I won't say completely finalized. There's been a judgment reached, but there's probably going to be some more stuff. But let me just quickly break down what that whole thing was about. And the big part of it has been finalized, but there's still like a little thing hanging there, okay? This whole thing with All Star Boxing goes back almost 6 years. They had Canelo Alvarez when he was just starting out, when he was really just a prospect. And they're a small-time promoter, I think, based out of Florida. And when their contract was up, Golden Boy Promotions scooped up Canelo to a big contract, and they've taken him and built him obviously into the superstar that he is right now. And of all the people that are technically unretired, or, and fighting right now, active, Canelo is the biggest moneymaker in North America, right? So All Star Boxing claimed that they still had options on Canelo because of a title fight. And I won't get into all the nuance of it. I'm, condensing all this, but long story short, they claimed that Golden Boy Promotions violated the contract they had because they claimed that they still had options. And this has been going back and forth for years. So they were going against Golden Boy for violating this contract. They were also going against Canelo because they were saying, Canelo, you owe us money because since you went with Golden Boy, you've become this big star, you've made millions and millions of dollars, and we helped build you into what you are, so we want a chunk of that. So those were the two pieces of this lawsuit. So this thing went to trial, and a jury determined that Golden Boy Promotions did nothing inappropriately and sided with Golden Boy, dropped the whole contract dispute thing, and in fact ruled that All Star Boxing has to pay for Golden Boy's legal fees, which I'm sure were in the 7 figures because this has been going on for so long. There was pressure on Golden Boy for a while to just settle this out of court and move on. But Golden Boy Promotions felt very strongly that they had done absolutely nothing wrong. And again, the jury sided with them. So that part of this whole thing is done. That's over with, okay? And Golden Boy is going to be reimbursed for their legal fees. But they also determined that Canelo Alvarez has to pay All Star Boxing $8.5 million for quote-unquote value added. Now, Canelo and Golden Boy are going to appeal that decision. So expect to hear more from that in the future. But as it stands now, Golden Boy Promotions is free to do business, any way they see it. They're not going to come out of their pocket one dime to All Star Boxing. But Canelo, at least at this point, is out $8.5 million. When you consider what he's been making for his last few fights, that's really kind of a drop in the bucket. But I expect that if they really do go forward with this appeal, I don't think that $8.5 million is going to go away, but maybe they'll knock it down a little bit. But it's kind of a risk-reward thing because if they do appeal that, then Golden Boy Promotions is going to have to pay those legal fees, right? They're going to have to cover those legal fees for Canelo. So no one's going to reimburse that, win, lose, or draw. So is it worth it to pay potentially $1 million or more to go to court, again, to try to appeal this thing and get maybe that 8.5 knocked down to 4.5? Is it worth it? How long will that draw out? Who knows? Maybe Canelo will just say, you know what, screw it. Here, write the check and just be done with it so he can move forward. But as of now, Golden Boy Promotions, they released a press release to us yesterday, an email to everybody, and they said that they're going to appeal that. So there's probably going to be more to come from this, but as it stands right now, nothing from any future bouts or anything like that is going to All-Star Boxing. So how does this affect the promotion, the possible fight with Gennady Golovkin? I don't think it has any real effect. I don't think the fight was going to happen this year regardless. And I do think that this lawsuit did play a role in that. But I do think they can go forward with that fight now. I still think it ain't happening till next year. But wherever Golden Boy and Canelo go from here, whether it's, a Billy Joe Saunders or a Liam Smith or something like that, or maybe even a David Lemieux, none of that money from that promotion or anything in the future will go to All-Star Boxing. So they're kind of free to operate. So you should expect to hear something from Golden Boy and Canelo about who they're going to fight within the next month or so. So that's why this is newsworthy, because it means that they can move forward with their business. Now, in other news, Deontay Wilder is scheduled to fight Chris Arreola July 16th in Birmingham. And, this was met on Twitter with some nasty kind of reaction. I tweeted about it. And look, the fight itself isn't that bad of a fight. It's probably Deontay Wilder's best opponent since Bermane Stiverne, as crazy as that sounds. It's the guy that Bermane Stiverne beat twice and knocked out in their rematch. But the reason why I kind of was just joking around a little bit and kind of dissing this fight on Twitter is because the WBC and Al Haymon, but especially the WBC, has had a major hard-on for this fight for a long time. They've really, really been trying to get Chris Arreola that WBC title. They've given him opportunity after opportunity to get it. And Chris Arreola is very undeserving of this title shot. But when you think about it, is he any more deserving than some of the other guys Deontay Wilder has fought since winning the title? No. So you can hate a little bit on the WBC. You can hate on Al Haymon. Haymon has been trying to negotiate this fight forever. I've been calling this matchup for the last year and a half, 2 years. And I'm not the only one. There's plenty of other writers and stuff that have been saying, oh yeah, that fight's going to happen, right? I thought it was going to possibly happen after the Povetkin fight, should Wilder win that. We just all knew this was going to happen. The thing is, you can't hate on Deontay Wilder. This one isn't on him, okay? This is on Povetkin failing the drug test. And look, I know a lot of you guys out there are still really, really ardent about your position that Povetkin didn't do anything wrong and Vada screwed up and WADA screwed up and all. Guys, A sample, B sample came back positive. Now, unofficially, I can't really say anything on the record. I'm just unofficially. Povetkin was tested again and he passed. Okay, so I do think that, and we're going to hear more about that in the future. That's all I can really say about it right now. But I do think that the Wilder-Povetkin fight could possibly happen late this year or something. If Povetkin doesn't try to go to court and get, because if he goes to court, this whole thing, it's going to be delayed even more. If he wants to get in the ring and fight, I do think we can see a Wilder-Povetkin fight late this year. I think it's still possible. More to come on that. But for Wilder-Arreola, look, here's what I do like. I think it's going to be an entertaining fight. I think Wilder's going to know that, Arreola's going to know this is his last shot. He thought that the rematch with Stiverne was his last shot. This is really his last shot. And Chris is a tough guy. He could take a shot. That punch resistance has slowed down. But I do think he'll try to get in shape for this one. And for at least a few rounds, he's going to take it to Deontay and try to make this an entertaining fight. I also like the fact that Al Haymon's doing the smart thing here and putting it in Birmingham, Alabama. This is going to be, the second or third time now that Wilder has fought down there. And it does a good crowd. He's building up a nice regional fan base that's smart of Al Haymon, and he needs to do more of that. And he's starting to figure that out with some of his guys. He's starting to do that now. So expect a big crowd for this one. Expect it to be a pretty exciting fight. Expect Deontay Wilder to get a knockout, which would be an exciting thing for him, right? And it could end up being a one-punch kind of knockout, a brutal knockout. We haven't seen Arreola stopped in that kind of way. So maybe we get a highlight reel knockout of the year candidate here, and that just helps promote Deontay Wilder that much more. More news here. Finally, The Leo Santa Cruz Frampton fight was officially announced. And it's July 30th, like we thought. It's going to be in New York, along with a rematch between Danny Jacobs and Sergio Mora. A rematch that really nobody wanted, but hey, their really short, brief fight last year was pretty entertaining. So I have a slight bone to pick here, okay? We all have pretty much known this fight was going to happen, the Santa Cruz Frampton fight, for several months now. I think it was back in April, where Showtime / PBC announced their summer schedule. And they put tentative date July 30th, Santa Cruz Frampton. The fight was agreed to, terms were agreed upon. They knew it would be in America. They just didn't know which venue exactly, but that date was pretty much set in stone. And they were thinking New York, but there were other possibilities that they were considering, right? So because I work for Boxing Monthly and I've written for them a few times, I approached Leo Santa Cruz's people because I've interviewed him several times. I've covered several of his fights. I've interviewed him one-on-one several times for my channel, for Undisputed Champion Network. So I went to them and said, hey, you know, I would like to do a feature for Boxing Monthly magazine, very similar to what I did for Gennady Golovkin. And this would help really promote your brand over in the UK. They said, sure, but not until the fight is officially announced. You know, okay, fine. Well, that was 2 months ago. For the last couple months, I've been trying to work with them. I've been trying to work with Leo's publicist through Al Heyman. And his publicist is a good dude. We've worked together a lot. He always goes to bat for me, and he always tries to do everything he can to get his fighters exposure. He's the best in the business, in my opinion. And it's no fault of his own, okay? But just now today, or actually in the last 48 hours or so, we finally get the announcement. So I contact my editor here at Boxing Monthly, and I get the response that, Mike, it's too late for the July issue. We're past deadline. So, guys, again, I try not to rail on PBC too much. I try not to rail on Al Heyman and his fighters. I try to keep it fair with them. I just gave Heyman credit for doing the right thing with Deontay Wilder. But here I got to hold him accountable, guys. I've been trying to get his promoter access in one of the biggest boxing magazines in Europe. Okay, this would be huge exposure for Leo Santa Cruz. To get him on the cover of this magazine in a feature, to do a video interview and a photography in the magazine to go along with it, and also on the website. And because of the way Heyman and the way that everything is managed in that world, because everything is so delayed, now they're losing out on that. And I bent over backwards, almost harassing that camp to try to get this interview set up. And because of the way business is done through their advisor, it ain't happening. And now they're losing out on that exposure and that promotion. We, people in the media, whether it's high-level guys on ESPN or low-level guys like me, we promote these events. These guys aren't doing us favors. We're doing them a fucking favor. And again, you guys call me a Triple G homer, but him and his team get it. They announce their fights months in advance. They work with the media, coast to coast. They do interviews. They give you access to help promote their event. And guess what? They sell out their fucking fights. Go figure. So look, again, trying to work with PBC here, trying to do the right thing by them, trying to help promote their event. But because of their fuckery, because they were so just lazy in the way they're promoting, they're not going to get this extra exposure. So there you go. Just had to rant a little bit on that, but there's just another example, just a little insight for you guys so you can see what I'm talking about with some of this PBC stuff that just might not register. Okay? Anyway, one quick thing before we get into news and notes. I just want to do a quick update on my pound for pound list. Vasyl Lomachenko had an incredible performance, which I'll be talking about more in a second. But I'm going to put up on my screen here, current pound for pound list, the way I see it. And of course, some of these positions can be moved up, down, depending on the day of the week, right? But right now, I see Roman Martinez obviously number one. I have Sergey Kovalev number two, pound for pound. Right now, I think that there's not many people who have done what he's done in the last few years. Andre Ward, I put at number three. I know this is going to make some of you groan. I put him there more so based on his overall body of work and the fact that I think his fight with Sergey Kovalev, everyone pretty much has that, an even money fight going in. So he's obviously one of the finest talents in the world. He needs to get his ass back in the ring soon, though. I put Vasyl Lomachenko number four, and this is going to make some of you groan as well. The reason why I put him at number four right now is because he just moved up to a new division, and in his first fight in that division, took on a titleist, a veteran, a career 130-pounder, a bigger guy, and not only dominated him, but knocked him out in a knockout of the year type of candidate. That is what pound for pound is. Number five, I have Guillermo Rigondeaux. Again, I can hear groans over this. Look, Rigondeaux and Lomachenko are always going to be compared because of their amateur careers, and they're close in terms of weight and size and everything. But Rigondeaux in the last couple of years hasn't done shit. But that win over Nonito Donaire and his overall dominance combined with everything else, I have him at number five right now, just based on his overall body of work. Number six, Gennady Golovkin. Now, a lot of you have Golovkin a lot higher than this, and I understand that to a degree. The potential is there. But guys, bottom line, it's through no fault of his own, he still has not been able to fight an elite level opponent. He's fought very good opponents. He's fought guys like Lemieux, like Murray, and dominated, but he hasn't got that elite level opponent, nor has he moved up in weight or done anything like that. And again, I understand his plan. If he fights and beats Canelo Alvarez, he's right up there toward the top. But as it stands right now, I got him at number six. Number seven, I have Terence Crawford. Some of you will be upset that I have him below Golovkin. Well, I do because he hasn't really done much since the great year he had a couple years ago. And I think overall, Gennady Golovkin has been much more impressive and dominant in recent years. Number eight, I have Naoya Inoue, the Japanese fighter who's moved up in weight, dominated. He's only got 10 pro fights, but so far he's looked outstanding. And again, moved up in weight and won a title. When these little guys, these real little guys toward the bottom of the weight scale, move up in different divisions and win titles in different divisions, that's pound for pound. Number nine, Canelo Alvarez. Some of you, might not consider him a top 10 pound for pound guy. I do, just when you look at the competition he's fought. Now I know, Amir Khan, nobody wanted to see that fight, but he showed some adjustments in that fight. I thought he showed some marked improvement. Easy to do when you're fighting a guy much smaller than you. I get that. But look, man, he fought Irizlandi Lara. He fought Floyd Mayweather, Austin Trout. He has taken on some tough opposition in the last 4 or 5 years and done pretty damn well considering. He's still a young guy. He's still improving. I think he's one of the best fighters in the world. Number 10, Juan Francisco Estrada, who we'd love to see in a rematch with Roman Martinez, but from what we're hearing, it sounds like Roman Martinez is just going to move up to 115 pounds. So maybe Estrada will follow him up to 115. We'll see. But again, Estrada is a guy who's fought at different weight classes and moved up and done well. And in fact, he's got a bigger claim on the lineage right now at flyweight than Chocolatito. So that's my top 10 right now. And there's several fights coming up that are going to affect this top 10 list. Look, you got Crawford Postal, you've got Thurman Porter, you've got Brooke Vargas, Santa Cruz Frampton, which I just talked about. And there's others that will happen hopefully later this year. So right now we are in this period of transition in boxing, and this pound for pound list and the divisional, the top of every division is kind of in this shakeup right now. And it's going to just kind of be this way for the next year or so. And considering all the budget issues HBO is having and some of the issues with PBC and the lawsuits between Golden Boy and them and all this stuff going on, things are just kind of in this weird, funky gray area phase. But at the end of all that, over the next 6 to 12, maybe 18 months, You're going to see a new order in boxing, and it's already starting to happen. Obviously, Chocolatito, Kovalev, Golovkin, those guys are really starting to stake their claim. They just need those big signature fights. So when we see a Kovalev-Ward, I think the winner of that fight is pound for pound number one. If we see a Gonzalez-Estrada rematch over the next 18 months, especially if it's at 115, the winner of that fight might be pound for pound number one. There's all kinds of stuff coming up that's going to determine the new pecking order in boxing. And it's really an exciting time. We just have to kind of be patient for a little while. So let's get right to it. Last week in New York, there were fights upstate and there were fights down in the city. Let's start upstate, where Demetrius Andrade put on an outstanding performance against Willie Nelson, scores a 12th round TKO, knocked down Nelson in the 1st, 11th, and 12th. This was a WBC eliminator, as I talked about before. He's lined up to fight Charlo. I'm not so sure that fight ever happens. If it does, we're gonna have to wait a long time for it. Expect the advisor involved to prolong that as long as he can. Andrade is now 23-0, 16 knockouts. Look, man, he's a 28-year-old, 6'1", southpaw, 73-inch reach. I've been saying this for the past year or so. He's my favorite as far as potential upside, potential superstar capacity at junior middleweight. And that includes J-Rock. I think Andrade at this point has more upside than J-Rock because I think he has more dimensions and more upside. Now, will that potential be seen? Will that upside, will he climb? That remains to be seen. We have to wait and see. Andrade has been very inactive. He needs to get active. He needs to have at least 3 fights this year, if not 4. But he looked outstanding in this fight. And here's a guy that I would put up against everybody in that division right now, including Ruslan Lara, and I would favor him to win. I would favor him slightly over J-Rock right now too. Yep, I'm saying it. And I think he knocks out both Charlo brothers. Yep, I'm saying it. And eventually, these guys are going to be moving up to middleweight. Now, of course, that's a couple years away. But you're looking at a guy here, Demetrius Andrade, who perhaps 2-3 years from now could be winning titles at middleweight and be the middleweight champion of the world, especially if by that point Golovkin has moved up to super middleweight or higher. It all depends on how things play out, right? But the potential is there. I like the potential in this kid a lot. The main event of that card, John Molina scores a mild upset, unanimous decision over Ruslan Provodnikov. Man, John Molina looked bigger. Holy shit. When you saw these two guys at the weigh-in, whoa. When I saw them at the weigh-in, I was like, man, I should have changed my pick right there. I thought at that point it'd go all 12, and I started to lean toward Molina by decision. Before I saw them at the weigh-in, I was picking Provodnikov by late TKO. I thought that he would just chop Molina down. The thing with Provodnikov, man, he looked done. He just looked mentally and emotionally out of it. It looked like he was going through the motions. Provodnikov's not a guy who's scared. He's not scared of anything, right? So it wasn't that. It's just he didn't seem like he had his heart in it anymore. And other people have talked about this. Provodnikov's style is just, he was just a wrecking ball, just full straight forward, right? And he would just kind of out-muscle guys, out-will, out-tough guys. He can't really be hurt, can't really be stopped, but he's like a piece of granite, like a boulder. But every blow just chips away at it, and you start to put cracks in that boulder. And that's what started to happen to Provodnikov. And now it's like emotional cracks and mental cracks. And I just think, he's probably at a point where he's like, man, is this worth it anymore? I go through all this pain. I go through all these injuries and this agonizing pain head to toe. Because some of those Provodnikov fights, that dude was sitting in ice baths for a week after the fight. You're basically a vegetable for a week after those fights like he had with Bradley, or just wars, right? Is it worth it to keep doing this to myself? It's just kind of the feeling that came across. Now, was this a one-time thing? Was there something going on in his personal life? Something that happened in camp that we don't know about? It's possible. Boxing is so mental. This isn't a sport where you get like a 7-game series or where you have teammates to bail you out. On any given night, you could just look bad for a bunch of different reasons, right? So Showtime just invested money in him. He's obviously going to be in a meaningful fight on Showtime again very, very soon. Maybe he'll look better. Maybe he'll regain the hunger somehow. But from what I saw, man, he's done. And from what I saw, he almost looked like he's going to be a gatekeeper now and almost use as cannon fodder for prospects coming up that want a name to build themselves off of. For John Molina, he looked really good in this fight and was boxing well. Look, when Molina has a guy in front of him that's one-dimensional and is smaller than him and can't hit him clean, he does well. He looks pretty good. You think back to his fight with Lucas Matisse, where he took a lot of punishment. He had his moments against Matisse. The difference between Matisse and Provodnikov is Matisse could box a little, and he had a little bit more skills and craft. He could punch with both hands, so he could make adjustments. And Provodnikov, he tried, but just wasn't there. So, look, this figured to be a possible Fight of the Year candidate, and it was a dud. Not saying it was a bad fight, but it wasn't a very memorable fight. It just goes to show you, man, you just never know. Sometimes fights look really good on paper, and then the way they play out, it was okay. Nothing great. That's why the Vargas-Salido fight from a couple weeks ago was so special, because that looked good on paper, and it lived up to the hype. It probably exceeded the hype to a degree. So, man, you just never know until two guys get in the ring. But in New York City, Vasyl Lomachenko scores a 5th-round knockout over Roman Martinez, not Gonzalez. Like I said 1,000 times last week, Roman Martinez scores a 5th-round knockout and just looks sensational. He looked better at 130 pounds than 126. After the fight, Roy Jones Jr. said that Lomachenko was pound for pound number 2 behind Andre Ward. There's a few things wrong with that sentence, but I'm just going to talk about the Lomachenko part. Look, I know I just said that he's number 4 on my list right now. Number 4, number 5, you can really move, any of my list up or down 1 or 2. But yeah, I am ranking him that high. But number 2? That's a little too high, considering the other talent we have out there in boxing right now. Lomachenko looked outstanding. He's now won titles in 2 weight classes, and he's only been a pro for a little while. Doesn't even have 10 pro fights yet. I mean, it's very, very impressive. But Roman Martinez was kind of made to order style-wise. It's still very impressive the way he knocked him out. And he's starting to become a more exciting professional style boxer. I made a video about Lomachenko and Rigondeaux, comparing them, and some of the Twitter and social media crap that fanboys and haters go back and forth with those two guys on. And in that video I made, it was about 7-8 months ago, I talked about Lomachenko being more of an amateur style technician. That's no longer true. He still is. He was in his first few pro fights, but he is turning into a real professional style fighter. And he's gotten guys out recently going to the body. He's got guys out now going to the head. So he's becoming more and more exciting. And obviously, HBO wants to do the Vasyl Lomachenko Orlando Salido rematch. Salido was there in the crowd, and Max Kellerman of HBO asked Loma about him after the fight. Loma talked a little bit of trash as best as he kind of could to Orlando Salido. I think that's a no-brainer. They got to do that rematch. Salido doesn't have that many bumps and bruises, so perhaps they could do that at the very end of this year. I really wish they'd do it this year. 2016 needs more big fights. I think that would be a great fight at StubHub. I think it'd be an instant sellout at StubHub. But if they wanted to do it indoors, if it were in December and they were afraid about weather or something, they could do it here at the Forum. And I don't know if it'd quite sell at the Forum, if it'd quite do 16,000 at the Forum, but it would do at least 12,000, I'm sure. And if they price tickets right, they could maybe sell it out, especially with a strong co-feature. But Lomachenko and his people have said they're not going to stay at 130 that long. They're already targeting 135. I hope they don't jump up to 135 too quickly. I'd like to see them fight at 130. There's some interesting fights to be had. Javier Fortuna, who has a title at 130, he's fighting Jason Sosa in a couple of weeks in Beijing. He's got the WBA title. Loma has the WBO title. Francisco Vargas still has a title. Of course, he's got to heal up. But should Fortuna be successful in his fight coming up, I'd love to see Loma against him. Of course, Salido, Vargas, any of these guys. Like, there's a lot of talent there. So it would be very, very interesting to see that. Real quick for Roman Martinez, I understand he was made to order, right, style-wise, but he's only been stopped one other time, and that was in 2013 against Mikey Garcia, and that was a TKO 8. Lomachenko beat this guy down, and he's a smaller guy than Mikey Garcia, and for him to do that, especially in New York with that partisan Puerto Rican crowd there were some Ukrainians, obviously, it's New York, but I just thought it was a really, really impressive performance from Lomachenko. We need to see more of that. And look, I didn't even think about this, but the Leo Santa Cruz Frampton winner could be next because Bob Arum just settled his beef with Al Heyman. So if Santa Cruz were to beat Frampton, and that fight's going to be in New York, hey man, maybe Santa Cruz could move up to 130 and fight Lomachenko in New York. That could be, that's a doable thing. I mean, it's within reason, right? So we'll see. Maybe cooler heads will prevail and these things could happen in the future, but it's an exciting time for him. Another thing on that other card, I don't know if I mentioned this, but Willie Monroe Jr. and Andrei Fedosov got W's. So those guys get back in the win column. For Fedosov, he's the guy who won that heavyweight Boxino tournament last year. I think he was laid off because of an injury. He hasn't lost or anything since then, but just hasn't fought. So good for him to get in the ring, and Willie Monroe Jr. looked pretty good in his fight as well. So he gets back in the win column. This Saturday, June 18th in Chicago, it is PBC on NBC. Andrzej Fonfara going up against Joe Smith Jr. I don't know who the hell Joe Smith Jr. is. Don't know anything about him, but that's who Andrzej Fonfara is fighting. You know who I'd like to see Andrzej Fonfara fight? Adonis Stevenson. Remember him? He has a fight coming up against the scrub too. I don't understand, again, sorry, don't understand what they're trying to do here. Andrzej Fonfara has been in exciting fights recently. He's carved out a nice ledger for himself at light heavyweight, and he, I believe, more than earned a rematch against Stevenson. Why it hasn't happened yet, couldn't tell you. Why he's going up against this guy, don't know. But it's in Chicago. There's a very large Polish population there, so I expect there to be a good crowd atmosphere for this fight. And, that should bode well for the NBC broadcast. Also on the card, Juan Carlos Payano, Dominican fighter, is having a rematch with American Rasheed Warren. For those of you who don't know, well, these guys had a fight last August, I believe, and it was a split decision win for Payano. I think it was Warren's first professional loss. Warren was a very good American amateur, and he fought in the World Series of Boxing for the Los Angeles Matadors, and I covered several of those cards, and Warren was kind of the leader of that team. He was kind of the best of that lot. As a pro now, he's 13-1 with 4 knockouts. The problem with Warren is his style is way too amateurish. He fought in the amateurs way too long. He tried to go to another Olympics this last time around and probably should have went pro before then. He's one of those guys who just doesn't have a very good pro style, just does not hit hard enough. And unless he can clearly outbox a guy, it's going to be hard for him to get wins at the highest level in the sport. So I don't know. Who wins this fight? The rematch, maybe Warren gets it. The first fight, like I said, was a split decision. Not a very good fight. I don't expect much action in this rematch. Also, undefeated prospects Hugo Centeno Jr. and Erickson Lubin are fighting on the card as well. But that's really it for big fights this week. Next week, the 25th, we've got a lot of good matchups to talk about. So make sure you check out next week's episode. As always, like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the fights.